Now we move to the campaign. Donald Trump unplugged, unleashing a tirade against his top rival, Ben Carson, calling out Iowa voters, saying they would be stupid for believing Ben Carson. This is part of the 93 minutes. Donald Trump, Iowa.
This isn't something that I'm saying, oh, he's a pathological liar or he's got I'm not saying it. He said he's got pathological disease. He actually said pathological temper, and then he defined it as disease. So he said he has pathological disease. Now, if you're pathological, there's no cure for that, folks. If you're a child molester, a sick puppy, you're a child molester, there's no cure for that. There's only one cure. We don't want to talk about that cure.
So that was Fort Dodge, Iowa. And this is Chris Stirewalt in Washington, D.C., Fox News digital politics editor. Very few stones were left unturned here, Chris, all without a teleprompter. And as you would say, so much for diplomacy in the campaign trail.
Well, I don't think if you had he would have been helped if he'd had a teleprompter, because he wouldn't have likened his chief rival to a child molester. Yeah, nobody would have typed that in. So he might have been helped if he'd had one. And you have to have some sympathy for Mr. Trump, because at this point he is not the clear front runner as he once was. He's essentially in a tie. He's essentially in a tie nationally and in Iowa. He's lashing out at his rival. He's lashing out at voters. This is an unhappy place that he's occupying, and it's getting very ugly out there. And I think the biggest problem that he's got is the anger at the voters, who he says are stupid for supporting Mr. Carson, for listening to Dr. Carson. That's not going to work out for him.
Tell me a bit more about that Iowa stupid comment. He was referring to, if you believe his stories, then shame on you, essentially. How's that go over?
So one of the problems that Mr. Trump has had throughout his candidacy is a seeming fundamental misunderstanding of Christian doctrine. Christianity is a faith predicated on redemption. Ben Carson's story is, I was a teenager. I had huge anger problems. I was full of rage at the world. I accepted Jesus Christ as my personal Savior, and he changed my heart. That's what Ben Carson said. Donald Trump says that's not possible. If he was an angry person who attacked his mother with a hammer and tried to stab his friend when he was 14, it doesn't matter whether he accepted Christ. It just matters that that's his pathology and he'll never change. And talking about believing a person's story of personal redemption as stupid is not going to work in the Republican primary electorate.
But you know, supporters of Donald Trump love him for this very reason. And the detractors do not.
There are Donald Trump supporters who think that the worse the better, right? The nastier, the meaner, the more insulting that he can be, the better it is. But that is why his support has been essentially static. We've seen some ups and downs in polling, but essentially he's had a quarter of the vote in the Republican electorate since July. And that's fine, but it's not going to get him the nomination, because eventually the people who don't want him to succeed and find this approach repugnant, those people will band together, they'll pick a nominee, and they'll beat him with him.
Thank you, Chris.
You bet.
Chris Stirewalt there in Washington, D.C. Thank you very much. If you go through the speech yesterday in 93 minutes, Martha, I mean, there's criticism for just about everybody except for Ted Cruz. He said, hard for me to say anything about Cruz. He's been very nice to me. At some point, he probably won't be, so then I'll do what I did best. So maybe that's the next chapter.
Maybe.
We shall see you. Stand on by on that.
95 minutes without a teleprompter. An extraordinary rant, and we're going to continue to show you pieces of that.